Are you looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this football and basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select two or more players, pick more or less on their projections for a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's as easy as that. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Ready to test your skills? Join the PrizePicks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, PrizePicks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/bluewire and use code BLUEWIRE. That's code BLUEWIRE at prizepicks.com/bluewire for a first deposit match of up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Kirk Your Enthusiasm, presented by Pod Maverick. Today, I am joined by my friend and yours, Kevin O'Connor. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing excellent today, Kirk. How are you doing?
I'm good. I am just now realizing as we started recording, I did not plug in my HD camera, so you guys won't get to see me in HD. I know you're all very, very sad about that. Anyway, before we get started, I just read an amazing comment on our last YouTube video where I apparently made a poor argument about Chris Paul. And let me just say that my Chris Paul hatred must have clouded my judgment. Everything I said was wrong, and we will scrape it from the record for eternity. So, Kevin, this is your ungodly I know you like that segue. This is your ungodly busy season. Not that you're never not busy, but we really thank you for taking some time to hang out with us here, because Mavericks fans, as you have probably guessed, are a little bit anxious. So before we dive into the draft stuff, I wanted to talk to you about the year at large, because I wanted to lead on some more happier stuff, because frankly, the draft could, and where the Mavericks are right now, when the more and more I talk about it, like today, I was in our Slack, I get angrier, and I don't want to be angry. I want to start the show in a happy place. So, you have covered the league for quite a long time. You do a ton of work. You are just an absolute grinder. Anybody that wouldn't know that doesn't pay attention to the Ringer and the various podcast feeds. You're always working on something. So kind of looking back, what was sort of your favorite narrative to cover, the thing you enjoyed talking about the most with Chris Vernon? Like, what are the things you've enjoyed now that we have a moment to look back the day after the Nuggets win the NBA championship?
I mean, like, it all kind of blends together over the course of the season. But like, the highlight of my week all the time is doing the mismatch with Chris Vernon. That's been ever since I got hired by the Ringer in 2016, our first year doing that. It's our
I cannot believe you've done it for 7 years.
Yeah, 7 years. I know. It's unbelievable that like we've been at this so long, and hopefully many more years to come. And that's the highlight of my week, every Tuesday and Friday, or Monday and Thursday night, depending on when we record, talking basketball with Chris Vernon. But I enjoy everything I do. I love the draft stuff. That's a real pleasure to do. I've been doing that now for 10 years, even before the Ringer. And writing's fun, podcasting's fun, going on with Bill Simmons, getting those texts the morning of a pod recording. Hey, you get 30 minutes to come on tonight. That's always exciting. I love when that happens. So I love everything I do, but the highlight, the week to week, the stable thing week to week, the mismatch, I always look forward to that every single week, twice a week.
Well, it's incredible, because the kind of content you and Chris Vernon do, the live shows you guys did this year, you guys do so much work. When you had talked about how he sang some things to you, I had forgotten that happened entirely. Like, that's all just this year. I mean, there's just been so many things that have happened. It really is hard to nail it down. There was that one account, and you shared this today, that like talked about all the different funny things, like laugh out loud funny things that have happened in the year this year. It really is kind of too hard to pin down. So understanding that though, you do a lot of written work, and your guys' process at the Ringer, because I've talked to some of your colleagues about this. I really think it's interesting. You guys have like partner editors that you do things back and forth with, and it seems like you guys have a really good process. The sort of thing that I envy at Mavs Moneyball, because like we don't have the time. When somebody turns something in, I'm either like, this is good, this is bad. There's no feedback. With that in mind, what was sort of your favorite written story that you worked on this year?
Let me try to remember what I've done. I mean, I think, I know. Early in the year, it was like even before the season started, or like the week after the season started, my feature on Daryl Morey.
Okay, I remember that one. That was a good one.
The feature I wrote on him, because like some of the stories that were in there was the type of stuff where some people look at that as admirable qualities about Daryl and what makes him who he is. Other people thought he was a prick. I mean, and like there's so many feature stories that are written that are puff pieces and, written to make people look in a positive light. But I was happy with how that came out, because like I've been on that side of things where people are nagging at you saying, oh, they got to do this, got to do that. Hey, you want this story? You want that story? But it was really fulfilling to do something where I thought it painted a very clear, honest picture about who the figure was, and people can feel however way they want to about it. Like for me personally, I felt like some growth as a feature writer, because I primarily do like analysis and thoughts and columns and stuff like that. So to write a feature article like that, I was very happy with how it went earlier this season. And I hope to be able to do more of them, even though if somebody wants a feature article written, maybe they won't want it written after.
It's so tough. And you and I have talked about this offline, like the way content, I hate to use the word content, but just the way we, the things we make, written, podcast, video, whatever you want to talk about, everything has a shelf life. And so it's about the volume of work you put in versus what you get out of it and what your bosses get out of it, to be quite frank. So I still think it's pretty cool that the Ringer lets you guys do some of the in-depth work, because like my site, like we're quick hit, bam, bam, bam. Like we do some better stuff every now and again. We have some really good writers, but it's hard because you just don't see the payoff, and everything is so generated by a lot of traffic is still generated by search. So I really like, all these long-term, these deeper articles you guys write. One Morey story that I really enjoy. 12 years now, 12 years ago, our mutual friend Jason Gallagher wrote a thing called Lockout the Musical.
Yep.
Daryl Morey sought him out and took him out to lunch to talk about it, because Morey likes musical theater, he's just such an interesting guy. I mean, compared to so many GMs who are just like basketball lifers, I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So here's a ridiculous question. It might not seem so ridiculous, but I just have to ask it. Do you still like covering basketball?
I love it. I very much love the covering basketball. I mean, more than anything else, I like creating. I like making stuff and having an idea and seeing that idea become a reality. That's like what I get off on the most when it comes to, the career that I have. And basketball being a sport that I've loved my entire life since I was, 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever. The fact that I'm able to be creative inside this whole basketball NBA ecosystem is, it's beyond whatever I ever could have dreamed of when I was a kid, or even when I was like a young adult. It wasn't until I was like 21, 22, 23 that like I kind of saw what was in front of me, Yep. So I very much still enjoy it. I don't feel jaded at all. I don't feel tired at all, despite, how busy I am. I very much enjoy what I do. I take pleasure in it. There's a moment earlier in the season where like my mom, she said to me, she's like, she's living in LA now. I said I had to do something. She's like, Kevin, you work so hard. Take a night off. And she kind of like stopped herself in the middle of that. And she says, I know you enjoy it. And like, she just like left it at that. And yeah, I do. I very much enjoy it.
Yeah, you touched, and that's why I wanted to ask. And, of course you could be lying, but guys, trust me, Kevin's not lying. So otherwise he wouldn't be doing the volume of work that he's doing, where you see people and my friend Matt Moore actually berated me yesterday, where he said, stop acting like you just do this, as a part-timer. He's like, you do this professionally. It's your second job. He's right about that, but I still can't really place myself in the classification of people who do work all day. But then, out in the field, you just see people who, particularly it just comes across in the way they make their work, where it's like, they're not enjoying the game right now, or they're not enjoying. And so in that part can be a little bit of a struggle. So that's why I wanted to touch on that.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Before I get to, so I had 3 sets of questions that I sent Kevin the questions. He probably didn't read them, which is for the best.
I did not see them.
They were in the calendar invite. It's fantastic. Before we get to the next set of questions, I should have told you that. It's fine. Like
that's all good. No worries.
I want to remind everybody who's in here in the stream and listening on podcast and then watching on the video later. If you could go hit that subscribe button, that would be absolutely fantastic. It would be very helpful to me. If you could subscribe to Pod Maverick, that would be a big deal to me. I would really appreciate it. The second thing, for the 65 of you who are in here right now, which is not that many, I know we get more during the season. This is sort of the nature of these things. If you could do me a favor and go and like that stream, that's how we get it can pop in other people's searches. It's just very helpful to me. So I'd really appreciate it if you took the time to like the stream and subscribe to the show. Okay, coming back to we're gonna work around to draft stuff, guys. You don't get the main course for the Dallas Mavericks right up front. We talk about other things. This is we're gonna bring them in. You mentioned that I first came across your work when you were doing more draft stuff before you were doing NBA coverage at large. Now I know you have to kind of get into the draft piecemeal because you're doing all sorts of other work throughout the year. As you've gotten more and more into your draft work this year, which prospect has surprised you as like the one that's become, a Kevin O'Connor guy, so to speak?
I think over the draft process, I guess the guy who kind of came on early for me was Taylor Hendricks out of UCF, and that's a guy obviously Mavs fans like a lot at number 10. That was more so like earlier in the year in December. He was my guy. He stayed my guy over the course of the season. Kobe Buffkin out of Michigan. That's somebody at the start of the season where it's like, okay, I mean, he struggled as a freshman. He started the year looking better with Michigan as a sophomore. But all eyes are largely on his teammate earlier in the season, Jet Howard, not on Buffkin. But the more you watch Howard, the more impressed you come away with Buffkin. And now Buffkin I have ahead of Howard on my rankings. And I think, watching these playoffs, like you think about who are the players that could fit on Denver, who could fit on Miami, and Kobe Buffkin, his processing speed on the floor, his feel for cutting, his ability to make the extra pass, he's like a very good funky at rim finisher using his left or right hand. Like he has acrobatic finishes around the rim. He can make the extra pass and play make. I'm like, oh, Kobe Buffkin could play with Jokic, or he could play in this motion that the Miami Heat run. I think he's the type of guy who I like him a lot. I have him 14 on my board at the moment on the draft guide, and possibly could end up even higher on him at that point. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if he ends up higher than some players ahead of him drafted when we redraft 5-10 years from now.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I've kind of, there's about like a 7-guy range that I'm keeping my eye on, and I'm not done enough. And partially this is just because I don't want to follow, I don't want to fall in love. It's really painful when you fall in love with a guy like Desmond Bain, for example, only to see your team pass on him and pass on him and pass on him and for him to fall to the perfect fit with the Memphis Grizzlies. That absolutely kills me. That's a good one. I'm gonna have to do some more work into Kobe Buffkin. So let's just kind of think like lottery-ish range, maybe top 20 at most. Are there any potential fits with team that you absolutely love? So obviously, Wembanyama's out, but then kind of from there, it seems like things are getting a little interesting as we get closer. Are there any fits that you just love?
I think like in the top 5 or 6, or let's just say number 7, Indiana. Indiana at number 7. You think about what they have with they move the ball. Tyrese Halliburton is the primary source of offense. They have Miles Turner in the front court. They're the type of team, like they are a favorite team fit in terms of a bunch of prospects could go there. Like I think they're a good fit for one of the Thompson twins because those guys love to play off ball. They can keep the ball moving. They could have great chemistry with Tyrese Halliburton, who's a great cutter himself. Jarris Walker could add some beef in that front court, some toughness next to Miles Turner. He could play some small ball 5 or play the 4 next to him. Like the Pacers are my favorite kind of team to match multiple different players to.
I hate giving Rick Carlisle good players. Like giving Rick Carlisle, he's just such an adaptive coach. Giving him good players upsets me because the Mavericks didn't give him enough good players for a real long time.
For sure, and that's like the interesting thing for Dallas at 10 now, right? Like who's the right fit for Luka there? Like it's a very important pick for them. Whereas for some of these other teams, like Indiana or Utah, Orlando, it's important. Like you got to hit on your pick, but it feels like slightly, lower stakes, or maybe you can take a little bit more risk and be a bit more creative and afford to miss because your team is so much younger. And that's what's going to be so interesting with the Thompson twins, Amen and Osar Thompson. They're 4 and 5 on my board. I think both of them, like how much have you watched of them, Kirk, with like Dallas at 10? They're probably slightly out of range and they're probably not they're higher risk, but at the same time, they're higher floor in the sense that they are great defenders. They're selfless. They know how to pass. It's just they don't know how to shoot. That's like a potential fatal flaw, but that's what makes them so appealing as a prospect for a lot of these teams because they're both high floor and, maybe their ceiling isn't as high as you hope without the jumper.
Right. Well, the Thompson twins are just so much fun because it one of the things I think like this finals taught us, I'm getting off my questions, but I don't care. This finals reiterated how important skilled size is. And the Thompson twins are skilled size. And they're 20, so they're a little bit older than you might expect. But when go look at Kevin Durant's picture when he came in from the draft, NBA strength and conditioning programs are second to none. We're each a little too young for this, but the Houston Rockets took Yao Ming, who was weighed 300 pounds at 7'6" and could barely bench press, and turned him into a monster without putting on any more actual weight. I really believe in most NBA's teams' ability to develop guys physically. It's some of the skill development can be really hit or miss, but like, man, I would freak out if either Thompson twin was there at 20 or at 10. That would just, I would lose my mind. The fit stuff is just so interesting to me because it, like Aaron Gordon's a great example of this. Aaron Gordon was miscast as a number 1 option. And where is he best at? He is like kind of a 3B if we're being fair to Denver. And, he got paid his money and he won a championship yesterday. It's just, these sort of things are always really interesting to me because like if a guy goes the wrong place, it can really be bad for his development for a few years because I've held the opinion for a while that I think like 16 to 22 are kind of prime development years where you make real big leaps. I was talking to, was it Rafael Barlow, who said the guy on Wembanyama's team, Bilal, he said his development over the last 18 months has been one of the most shocking things he's seen in kind of professional since he's been doing this as a pro. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point because talking about prospects starts to get me excited.
Koulibaly is like a perfect example. I mean, he's 18 years old. He'll be 19 before his rookie season, but like he was originally going to be a 2024 guy. And now he's a 2023 potential lottery pick.
It's
Mark
amazing.
Stein. Yeah, like, do you see the Mark Stein report? I think it was this morning where he said that the Utah Jazz like him at number 9. I mean, top 10, right? It's wild.
I participated in a SB Nation community mock draft, so all like the site managers and then Ricky O'Donnell, and whoever runs the Washington Wizards took him at 8.
Oh,
and
wow.
Because it. And we're progressing more towards the Mavs stuff that I want to get to, but it's really, really something. Okay. I have another, because I don't want to keep you longer, because I told you about a half hour, already 20 minutes in.
Oh, good. I got all day.
And looking at the lottery, where are kind of, as you see it right now, the various, what I'm thinking of is choke points, but that's probably not the right terminology. Like in terms of the if-then statements where it's like, if the Portland Trailblazers want to move off their pick, because like, where are the big points? Because it seems kind of pointless to talk about what the Mavericks could do at 10 without really thinking about what other teams could do at spots 2 through 9.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the draft order is what it is today, but I'm not, like, I have a hard time doing mocks right now. Cause it's like, I don't know what the order is going to be. I mean, there's a strong possibility that Charlotte on draft night gets an offer for number 2 that they can't say no to, or that Portland gets a trade offer from some surprise team. Like we're talking to this week. This week, it's about the Pelicans. Oh, the Pelicans are trying to move up to number 2 or number 3. Later this week or early next week, it could be about the Wizards or the Pacers or the Magic or the Raptors. Like there's these other teams that are doing their work on Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller that have assets, that have appealing players and picks that they could offer for those top picks. And Charlotte and Portland at number 2, they very well could move. And never mind Houston at number 4. So could they. If they feel like they're getting a strong signal that they're going to get James Harden, maybe they're willing to shift down 5 spots or 3 spots or 10 spots and get a bunch of other assets and a good player and have a more appealing package to offer to James Harden in free agency. So like, I think 2 to 9, the one thing I'll say, Kirk, is like when it comes to preparing for number 10, I don't necessarily think the names are going to change all too much in the top 7 or 8. It's just about which teams are actually going to be selecting there. So like in all likelihood, I mean, like it's safe to say the Thompson twins, Scoot, Miller, Victor Wembanyama are gone. That's 5. In all likelihood, Cam Whitmore, Jarris Walker, Taylor Hendricks are gone by 10. So that's 8 total. And even then, like maybe one of them slips, maybe a Hendricks falls. That's always possible. But Anthony Black, Kason Wallace, Keontae George, like I think these are the types of guys who are going to be on the bubble of that top 10 and like in that 9 to 15 range, where I don't expect that to change too much for Dallas at 10. But even then, like, does Dallas even keep their pick? Do they keep the pick at 10?
See, and that's kind of where that's what we're getting towards, and that's kind of what I'm thinking, because for me, for the longest time, what the Dallas Mavericks have done since they drafted Luka was do what seems like every team that gets a potential all-NBA player does. Like, I can't think of the last team that actually built slowly. Maybe the Spurs will be the first one with Wembanyama with potential all-NBA guys, is press the fast-forward button. And they're in this pickle. And I've discussed this with you offline. The Mavericks, to me, have they have a bottom 5 roster. It's dark. They have 8 free agents, and all the guys stink. I mean, Kyrie doesn't stink, but it's like, do you want to pay $1 bajillion for Kyrie? It's just kind of a difficult situation. So just, understanding what you said, where there's still a lot of kind of factors at play. In your opinion, should the Mavericks just take the best player available at 10? Or do you think they should look into trading back and doing the thing that the Mavericks have not acquired a first round pick since 2005? it has been that long. So it's like, do you think they should try to trade back and get future assets, or maybe a couple of picks later in the draft? What are your opinions?
I think the best move is arguably to trade down, not out, not out. But because if you trade out, I don't know what you're going to get. Like,
there's
just
no trading out. Yeah.
Theoretical, like the Mavs offer number 10 to the Spurs for Keldon Johnson. I think the Spurs are saying no.
I also hate that. Like, what does Keldon Johnson do for the Mavericks at $20 million a year?
Yes, 100% right. Like we're on the same page there. So like, what if Utah calls and offers 16 and 28 to move up to 10? Again, the other side of that Mark Stein report. Mark Stein said at number 9 they like Koulibaly, and then they want to trade up to get Keontae George, a guard out of Baylor. If that's accurate, if that's true, if you can get 16 and 28, you can get a player at 16 of pretty close to equal value at that you can at 10 at 16. And then at 28, this year's draft class, I think in that 25-ish to 45-ish range, there's a lot of good NBA ready talent that can contribute early on in their careers. Like we just saw in the finals with Christian Brown, he's being a contributor after a freshman year at Kansas. I think there's a heck of a lot of upperclassmen or sophomores in that range, like Colby Jones, Omax Prosper, guys like that. Maybe a Derek Whitehead out of Duke could slip. He was a top prospect in high
injury
school.
Concerns, right?
He does. He's had 2 foot surgeries. But I just think there's a lot of guys. Noah Clowney. I love Noah Clowney out of Alabama. A versatile center, can space the floor, but primarily like he's about defense and versatility and toughness. And I know like if the Mavs are, you feel urgency to build around Luka and to win now. But in this new era of the collective bargaining agreement, it's also very important to have rookie contributors. And I think I'm having a hard time with my rankings trying to account for that, because I think that should arguably increase the value of these NBA ready upperclassmen, even if they have lower ceilings than some of the quote unquote risks. Like a Jet Howard is 19 years old. He's raw. Maybe he ends up better in year 4, year 5 of his career. But if you can get, I don't know, like I mentioned Colby Jones out of Xavier, who's older and probably has less of a ceiling, that there's arguably more value when that guy's on a rookie deal making $2-3 million before he gets paid. So I think the new CBA, like that needs to be factored in here when it comes to where these guys stack up and what player value actually means. But it's hard to look ahead. I don't know.
I mean, this happened in the NFL when they did their last big collective bargaining agreement, where all of a sudden teams got like drastically younger. Yeah, they obviously have very different salary structures, but people have been chatting about it, and I come at this from a Mavs-centric focus, but it really feels like this CBA is going to kick about half the league like directly in the shins. And I don't understand why the players signed it, because it really feels like cutting off future earnings for particular guys. I mean, it's going to be really whoever figures out that Bill Simmons, your boss, is one of the things he's always been amazing at is the concept of being able to see around corners. Like he knows kind of what's coming next in the content sphere, has for 20 years. Whoever figures out the next CBA early is going to have the most, let's just say, a leg up on the race for championships for the next several years.
Maybe Denver already does. Trading that future first round draft pick.
Such a good pick. Man, in the finals, They win the finals and make a great trade. It's ridiculous.
I know. I mean, because like they're in that range. I just said 25 to 45 or so. Like now they have 37 and 40, and they're gonna have to lose somebody next summer in all likelihood. They have 2 second round picks that they can invest in and get guys on cheap contracts that could contribute early on, like Christian Brown did this year. I don't know. Like part of me thinks that might be the formula and increase the value of those rookie contract contributors even more. Like it's always been valuable if you have a rookie contract guy who contributes, that's valuable, but that could be even more valuable in the current league where the CBA is restricting teams from keeping players. You might have to keep cycling guys in and out. It makes drafting even more important than it already was.
Okay, so now I want to just kind of run past you. So I'm still hopeful. I think you're probably right that in the end, a lot of this draft goes more chalk than I expect, but it's because teams trade above the Mavericks and get these picks, and it just kind of makes sense. But if a Hendricks or a Walker or are there at 10, should the Mavericks just pull the trigger? Like, do either of those guys sort of fix? Like, Hendricks has been the guy that our site, Mavs Moneyball, has latched onto just as a plug and play, can help them in so many areas immediately. Are we overstating kind of like what he could do, or do you think he'd actually be a good fit?
I think he'd be perfect. I love Taylor Hendricks, the defensive versatility, the toughness, he can protect the rim a bit as a weak side help guy. He can switch onto the perimeter, and I mean, he's not going to be necessarily a guard stopper, but you can at least comfortably switch him onto those situations on guards and wings. He's offensively, he's like 39-40% 3-point shooter. With Luka, I'd imagine scenarios where he's used as a ball screener and forcing mismatches. He can, slip out of those pick and rolls for pick and pop threes, or he can roll down the lane. Like in high school, if you pull up like Hendricks playing in college his freshman year and then pull up the stuff that he did in high school, he pretty much played center in high school. And I could just see him being like a versatile piece for Luka on offense, like a great flank as a weapon for him. And then defensively, I think he's ready to contribute right away. A bit more than Jarris Walker. I like that the Hendricks fit for Dallas more than Walker. Two similar types of players, but either of them would make a heck of a lot of sense for the Mavericks at number 10 if they end up falling there. More so than a lot of the other guys that are going to be available. If it's not Walker or Hendricks, I mean, I'd really be feeling like I want to trade down if it's not one of them at 10.
See, and I guess I get that. And you and I briefly touched on this offline the other day. I am Anthony Black obsessive for very
nice.
partisan reasons. My commenter earlier who got mad at me about my Chris Paul, whatever stupid thing I said he's just like, you're Anthony Black homerism. I understand it now. I just believe in the work because Black, is such, you just don't see that many multi-sport athletes anymore. I just think the guy has a lot of room to grow. And frankly, I want more guys that can dribble on the Mavericks because I don't want Luka to always have the ball. That's my thing. It's like, I've been thinking a lot the past 2 days about the James Harden of it all in terms of how he played and did he maximize what you can do in kind of ISO heavy ball. And I think maybe the answer is yes. So I just saw what the Mavericks did to get the conference finals where they had multiple ball handlers, which is why I think Black is somebody I would be interested in. I heard a couple of us, Dalton Trigg of DallasBasketball.com actually reported this, but I heard through a couple of sources that Black, the Mavericks really liked Anthony Black's workout because Anthony Black is a big defensive guard who can't shoot. Does that sound like anybody in particular? Maybe a certain Mavericks head coach? So I don't know. I'm just
oh God.
Right, because it's like he would be a guy kid would love, like just on its face. And like honestly, that has to factor into where I think about these picks because Lively has been a guy that's been thrown around that the Mavericks should maybe want. I don't think the Mavericks play Lively because being a big in the NBA defensively is much more complex than being a guard. You have more responsibilities at first, more to learn. I don't know. I'm all over the map at this point.
Black would be very interesting with Luka. I wonder with Luka, as he's training overseas right now, getting himself into shape and all that. I wonder if he's keeping it. Yeah, right. I wonder if he's keeping an eye on the finals here and watching his good buddy Nikola Jokic and seeing, actually, the key to winning a championship isn't me doing my best James Harden impression. I actually have to give the ball up and share more. And that would require having more teammates because that's the one thing about Brunson. Like we saw the flashes of what could happen when he was sharing the ball more often. But even then, Luka still didn't fully embrace it. We've seen him for his national team cutting off ball, moving without the ball.
They've even gone to more Harden ball with the national team.
They do. Yeah, you're right. More so lately than like when he was younger. But like
absolutely.
When he was younger, then you could see the signs of what he was for the national team. If they can install a system incorporating some of that, and that's what Anthony Black, I would imagine, would help inspire. Because he is that connective piece. He keeps the ball movement. Like it never stops with him. So
I mean,
I would
Arkansas
hope.
is such a weird team to kind of go watch their video of
Yes,
because they had no spacing. So
not at all.
you consider a team like no matter where Black goes in the NBA, he's going to have more space. And
Mhm.
I just sort of, granted, I don't think he's there at 10. And if he is, I think you might be
Maybe.
right that things go awry. I just those range of guys are the ones that I'm really interested in. Now, before I let you go, there's a couple more players on the Mavericks roster that I'm sort of curious for your take on. Josh Green, who for the longest time I was convinced wasn't an NBA player. He had a 2020 draft will go down as one of the weirdest ones in NBA history. It's kind of like the 2000 draft. So it's less about Green and more about the process. And then there is Jaden Hardy. Do you have any sort of particular feelings on either of those players? Because the Mavericks fan base, when it was briefly assumed that maybe LeBron James might be interested in coming to the Mavericks, I had Mavs fans being like, "No, we cannot trade Josh Green and Jaden Hardy," and I thought I was going to die. So I'm very curious if you have strong opinions on either of those players.
I mean, I really like Jaden Hardy. I mean, for the Mavs to get him at 37, that was a worthy gamble and upside pick. And we saw the flashes last year with what he could do as a scorer in both the G League and then, the chances he got with the Mavericks. So I like Hardy a lot. I hope they keep him. I hope they continue investing in him moving forward. And then with, Green, like we saw the ups and downs with him. Obviously he stunk his first 2 years, but his third year with the Mavs, pretty good. I mean, he shot the ball well,
real good,
flying around on defense. He looked like a guy that could be a contributor. Obviously, it fell off at the end of the year, and he did not contribute at all in the playoffs. He struggled a lot. But moving forward for Dallas, he seems like he's the type of guy you want to have with Luka. Especially if they're able to incorporate more movement into their offense in the half court. I think that could allow Green to flourish even more. So it seems to be like they're on the right page with some of these selections.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that we run into, we've been talking about this a lot on this podcast and Mavs Moneyball in general, is that Green is not a wing. Green is a 6'4" guard who is built like Russell Westbrook. Like he's a thick guy. But at a certain point, we talked about this a few minutes ago, you have to just have positional size because that's like Luka Doncic being the Mavericks' best rebounder is one of the things that kills them defensively and just makes it so hard to build a team around. They just need big guys. And that's where this draft feels important to me because they just don't have a lot of pathways to bigger, better players.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Clowney, if they trade down, like I think he's a guy worth looking into as a Mavericks fan as well because he's much different than Christian Wood. But like the Christian Wood kind of mold, big man who can space the floor, big man who can provide versatile defense. Granted, he didn't always fulfill that, and he also didn't get a lot of opportunity over the course of the year. It was, he got it, then he didn't get it. It was up and down with Jason Kidd. I think Noah Clowney would be like kind of the inverted version of Christian Wood in the sense that with Christian Wood, he was inconsistent. Noah Clowney is consistent. He is stable. Okay. You're going to get effort from him on a night in, night out basis on the defensive end. So Clowney makes sense in that mold for them. But obviously, a rookie big is not the only answer. Dallas needs a lot more than that.
No,
but I think getting two, if they can trade down from 10 and get 2 or 3 rookies in the 25 to 45 range, to me, that would be a win for Dallas to build this roster out. And I just don't know if Luka would be happy with, having all that youth on the roster. And I don't know if Jason Kidd will want to play all those guys, but
probably I think the Luka question is really important. And, to our Slovenian fans, and what I'm about to say will make you furious. I think by catering to what Luka wants, you inevitably piss Luka off. Like sometimes this is what's happened in Portland with Dame. We don't talk about it enough because Dame's so loyal, even though he talks about wanting to go to another city every time he's asked.
Every time you put a microphone in his face, he's like,
really
Portland,
Miami, my boys. God. Fucking.
But I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave now.
NBA narratives. But with Luka, I think to a certain degree, you just may need to say, this is what we need to do. And the 2020 draft in hindsight is very difficult for me because they had 3 bites at the apple, only one worked out. But 2020 draft, as we talked about a second ago, is really, really, it's weird. And sometimes weird things happen and you just kind of got to go with what your gut is. I mean, the odd part about the Mavericks in the draft, going back to Luka, so 2018, before 2018, the Mavericks didn't care about the draft because they had a guy named Dirk Nowitzki, and there was no reason. You constantly mortgage your future because you have a Hall of Fame caliber player on your roster. Obviously, Luka is too, but you have him under contract for a couple of years. So I just think that what they've done in the draft when they've actually focused on it, and didn't have, 2020, we know for a fact that Donnie Nelson threw a fit and Haralabos Voulgaris had to make the picks. He said so on record. But Luka, Brunson, pretty good draft. Josh Green's worked out, maybe not the finest pick, but not bad. But then now you got like Jaden Hardy. So it's trust your process, trust your scouting, trust your instincts, and maybe don't worry so much about what could happen and just go get guys who you are confident in. I mean, the Mavericks taught Dorian Finney-Smith how to shoot. Luka gave him enough space to shoot. But I don't know. I oddly believe in the Mavericks development. I believe, I have lots of criticisms for Jason Kidd, but what they did with Jaden Hardy last year was one of the team's success stories. Like he was rough coming into the draft. Right? That's why he fell to 37. It's just something I wish they believed in their process more is all.
I think you're right on, honestly. I think you got to tell Luka, hey, this is what's going to lead to a championship with you here in Dallas. Just trust us.
Yeah.
Trust us. And you got to do as a front office what you think is going to be the best path towards that and maximizing Luka, even if he's, shouting and crying. If you put him on the floor with these young guys in their first or second years and you see the results follow, he'll grow to be happy. And that's what's going to matter if the results end up following. So you got to do what's best for you. Otherwise, that's when you end up making these short-term mistakes. That's what the Lakers did in getting Russell Westbrook, trying to appease LeBron James and listening to him, dealing future assets to make the most of that time. So I think for Dallas, they need to be cautious there, and not make a rash trade with the hopes of just keeping Luka happy.
Well, Kevin, I kept you up for 7-10 minutes more than I intended to, but I'm very grateful for your willingness to hang out with us. I promise not to bug you to come on my show for at least a year to 18 months. But in basketball time, sometimes all of a sudden it's, sometimes the slog of the season feels like the year is never going to end. And then all of a sudden basketball will be here with us again. So Kevin, we can find you on multiple places on the Ringer Network. I apologize. What is the name of your new show that you're doing with FanDuel?
We got the new show on FanDuel TV is called Beyond the Arc, and that can be found on Tuesdays and Thursdays on FanDuel TV, or you can watch an extended video podcast version on the Spotify app under the Ringer TV podcast feed, which is very confusing.
That. It was really confusing when all of a sudden there was a video of you going on my Spotify. The Spotify video thing, there's just certain levels of content I've determined I'm too old for, that I'm just because they keep changing and adding things. But I've enjoyed all your work, you and your podcast partner Chris Vernon. I remember the first time I heard the show where Verno was still doing real radio voice shtick, and he wasn't being conversational, and I was just like, this ain't gonna work. And then within a week, he had changed completely. And you and he, I've listened to podcasts since I graduated college in 2006, 2007. And you and he have some of the best chemistry. It's just a delight listening to you. Is there anything you want to plug before you go, or you just want to go take a rest after the finals?
I mean, if anybody wants draft content, just check out the Ringer's NBA draft guide. Got all my scouting reports and profiles in there. Got an update coming out on Wednesday that'll have a new mock draft, new rankings, new profiles. So yeah, I love doing that and love talking draft with you, man. You don't have to wait 12 to 18 months to ask me again. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, you're the man for coming on. We will talk soon, guys. This has been Kirk Henderson and Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast feed. Please leave me comments. I do read them, as evidenced by the fact that I opened the show responding to a comment. I very much appreciate people telling me when I'm a moron. It's much nicer than my son and my wife doing it, which happens more than you would think. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your night, and we will talk soon. Go Mavs.